In this video, we're going to discuss 3 ways that you can avoid defaulting on your federal student loans. So the first way is to change your repayment plan so that your monthly payment is lower than it currently is. So let's say that you're in the default plan where you have a fixed monthly payment every month for 10 years, right? So let's just say that that's $729 a month. Well, if you say, hey, look, all I can do this month is at best I could make payment of $200, well, you have some money to pay, you just can't make the $729. So what you can do is you can change your repayment plan so that it's based on your income, because if you can only make the payment of $200, it's likely because your income is lower. Maybe you're not getting as many hours at work, or you didn't get the level of job that you thought you were going to be able to get after graduating. So what you can do is you can go on an income-based repayment plan or an income-contingent repayment plan. Now, the income-based repayment plan requires that you be in high financial need, so that you have high debt relative to your income. And if you're having trouble making your student loan payment, that's probably the case. But even if you can't get into a situation where you say, hey, look, I've proven that I have high financial need, you can always do the income-contingent repayment plan. Now, you want to check and just verify that based on the student loan types that you have, that you'll be eligible for these types of plans. But you definitely, if you're having trouble making that monthly payment, you want to say, hey, can I go on a repayment plan where my monthly payment is going to be lower? You'll end up paying more interest over the life of the loan, right? You're going to end up extending how long it is for you to actually repay the loan, but you're going to make sure that you can make that monthly payment, right? Because if your monthly payment was $150 instead of $729, it's going to take a lot longer to pay the loan. But look, you've got $200 there, you said, so you'll be able to make the monthly payment, and you won't go into delinquency and ultimately into student loan default. Another way to deal with you might be saying, hey, look, I don't even have $200. Things are so bad, I don't have $200. Well, in that case, you should look into getting a student loan deferment. A deferment basically postpones repayment of your student loan. So this is a postponement. So you're going to take a time out. The interest will continue to accrue if they're unsubsidized loans. If they're subsidized, then you won't have to deal with that interest for that time. But it's postponing. It's like a little timeout for your student loans. Now, to be eligible for a deferment, because not just anybody can get a deferment, there are different qualifications. One is if you're unemployed. So if you're unemployed, you can get up to 3 years time. You can have your student loans deferred. Also, if you're in economic hardship, or for example, you're in a situation where you go to the Peace Corps, then you can also have your student loans deferred for up to 3 years. And I hate to even mention this, but also if you re-enroll in school at least half time, if you enroll in school at least half time, then you will also be able to get your student loans deferred. The reason I'm hesitant to mention this one is I don't want you to think that, hey, I just got to stay in school forever just so that I can, basically hide from these student loans. I would hate for you to think that. But if you're in a situation where you're already attending school and you're just taking a few credit hours and you would just need to take an additional class instead of taking that same class the next semester, if you can go at least half time, then you'll be eligible for what's called an in-school deferment. But you got to make sure that you contact your loan servicer to get the deferment and make sure the deferment goes through. You can't just say, hey, look, I'm unemployed and I'll just send a letter when I receive a notice in the mail. You have to make sure you get approval from that loan servicer. Otherwise, when you don't make the payments, you'll become delinquent. And if you're delinquent for at least 270 days where you don't make a payment, then you're in default. And then you can't go back and change your repayment plan or apply for deferment. Once you're in default, there's no going back. Now, if you can't get a deferment, then you can look into getting a forbearance. Now, forbearance is a little different than a deferment. A forbearance is just up to 12 months maximum. So it's up to 12 months, and it will either eliminate your payments for that 12 months, so in effect serving as a postponement, or it can reduce your payment for those up to 12 months. And to get a forbearance, as with the deferment, there are a number of different ways to qualify for a forbearance, and I actually have a video on how to qualify for a forbearance, and then I also have a video on deferments. So if you want to see the complete list of all the qualifications, I refer you to those videos. But I just want to give you an idea of some of the different types of forbearances. So forbearances are in two types. So there's discretionary and mandatory. Discretionary means that it's up to the loan servicer whether or not you'll get that forbearance. You apply and they decide whether or not to give it to you. So the two types of discretionary forbearances are financial hardship and then also illness if you're sick. A mandatory forbearance means that if you meet the qualification for that type of forbearance, the loan servicer has to give it to you. They don't have discretion in deciding whether to give it to you. And there are a number of different types of forbearances. I'll just give you one example, is if your monthly payment is greater than or equal to 20% of your monthly gross income. In that case, you are eligible for a forbearance. And so your payments can either be reduced or completely eliminated for up to 12 months' time. Now, I know that some of these situations don't seem ideal. You might say, hey, look, it's going to take me longer to pay my loans, or I've got my interest accruing while I have this forbearance, or I have this deferment. But you have to bear in mind that you want to avoid default at all costs. So default is going to do so many things. It's going to prevent you from getting financial aid again until you get out of default. It's going to mess up your credit rating. It's going to eliminate the ability to change your repayment plan or to go into deferment or forbearance. So you want to take these strategies to avoid default before it happens. It's a lot easier to prevent it from happening than to deal with it after it's already happened.